Convicted murderer Ntuthuko Shoba's application for leave to appeal his conviction and sentence has been denied. He'd filed the bid to overturn his murder conviction in the Johannesburg High Court. In 2020, he was found guilty of orchestrating the murder of his 8-month pregnant girlfriend, Tshegofatso Pule. Pule was found hanging from a tree. He's now serving life imprisonment. Senior reporter Silindelo Masikane was in court, and she's joining us now this hour just to give us a sense of what took place. Good afternoon, Sli. So Ntuthuko Shoba's leave to appeal his sentence and conviction and sentence has been denied.
Denied and refused, Bragdan. It's been 4 months, actually, in fact, since Ntuthuko Shoba was convicted and sentenced of the murder of his 8-month pregnant girlfriend, Tshegofatso Pule, back in July. And, of course, he had to make this application for leave to appeal to the very same judge who had convicted and sentenced him. And in terms of the arguments that were brought by his lawyers last week, they were saying that while Judge Stuart Wilson may not have been wrong in terms of his actual judgment, they believe another court may come to a different conclusion in terms of the weight that was used in the evidence that was brought by the state. The lawyers for Ntuthuko Shoba argued that Judge Wilson seemed to put a lot of weight, or believed the version more of the triggerman, Musgaisa Malepane, who confessed to the crime and fingered Ntuthuko Shoba as the one who hired him for the murder of Tshegofatso Pule. They're saying that Judge Wilson had actually acknowledged that Malepane's evidence needed to be approached with caution, that he was a liar, and that he may actually have a vendetta against Ntuthuko Shoba, which is why he has fingered him to be the one who had hired him to carry out the murder of Pule. But Judge Wilson saying that he simply was just not convinced, because a number of times during the arguments, in fact, Shoba's lawyers agreed with the judge that, in fact, in terms of how he weighed up the evidence, how he was able to believe Malepane over Shoba, they did not have anything to add, really, or to differ to Judge Wilson's reasoning as to how he came to the conclusion that Shoba was guilty of premeditated murder. Let's just take a listen to some of the comments that were made this morning during the delivery of that judgment.
There is no sufficiently compelling reason to grant leave to appeal. To do so would be no more than an exercise in judicial vanity, and one which would only lengthen the dull, dragging agony that these proceedings have no doubt imposed on Miss Pule's family and friends. No substantial argument on the prospects of an appeal against sentence was directed to me. I put to Mr. Barnard that if I was right to convict Mr. Shoba, then I must have been right to sentence him as I did. Mr. Barnard offered no riposte. For all these reasons, the application for leave to appeal against both conviction and sentence is refused.
And clearly, Silindelo, the NPA must have welcomed this judgment.
Most certainly. One of the issues that was stressed in terms of the arguments was around the fact that it seemed that the state had relied quite heavily on this confession. Shoba's lawyers arguing that the circumstantial evidence that was brought before the court just was simply not enough. However, of course, as you've heard from that judgment from Judge Wilson, he still believes that the NPA presented sufficient evidence for him to be able to convict Ntuthuko Shoba. So let's just take a listen to some of the reaction from the National Prosecuting Authority with regards to the judgment today.
As the NPA welcomed today's ruling, we have argued in court that we hold the view that there is no higher court that can overturn this court's decision. We argued that the evidence that we placed before court was of sound nature, and though we knew that the defense would want to tap into the credibility of one of our witnesses, that is why, as the NPA, we then ensure that enough evidence is gathered to corroborate the evidence that he brought before court. So we still hold that view that there are no prospects of success in appealing this matter.
Silindelo Masikane, thank you very much for that update this hour on the judgment there in court where Ntuthuko Shoba was denied leave to appeal his conviction and sentence, currently serving a life term for orchestrating the murder of his then 8-month pregnant girlfriend, Tsikhufatse Pule.